You're listening to Bigfoot Society, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. Tonight's account starts with a mother, a summer camp, and a whistle in the dark Oregon woods. And what followed was years of obsession and a terrifying proof that something is watching from the tree line. With whistles, wood knocks, a van that turned into a panic room, and two massive creatures caught on camera. This is Carrie's account, and it might be the most convincing one you've heard yet. So stay with us. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to Kerry Vill today. Carrie is from the group Lane County Bigfooters out there in Lane County, Oregon. I was able to meet Carrie at the Sasquatch Summerfest of 2024. We had a great chat, and I'm glad to finally get Carrie on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm very good. Thank you, Jeremiah. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Absolutely. It's, I do love talking to people about the Pacific Northwest. It's a lot of fun, and I especially like Oregon. So, Carrie, I would love to start things off by, do you mind sharing what it was that first got you into Bigfoot research?
Into this crazy adventure of Bigfooting. Yeah. Well, I never had given it much of a second thought until we moved out here to Oregon, and I was taking my kid to summer camp. And I told this on another show at the museum out at 58, like a couple months ago. So you could listen to it there also. So we'll see how similar the stories are. But I was taking my kid to summer camp. It was the end of summer in August 2012. And he experiences multiple special needs diagnoses. And it was overnight camp, but he never made it one night overnight. So every night I had to come pick him up. The first night I came, they called me at like 10:30 at night. So I rolled in like 11 o'clock, and they're all down at the campfire in the dark, singing Kumbaya or whatever they're doing down there. And I have my binoculars, my minivan, and my coffee. And I open the door and I'm stargazing. And I start noticing out in the woods that something is whistling. And then I notice there's two somethings whistling. And they're at different areas. And I listened to them for a while. And then, being kind of a smart aleck, I whistled back in the same manner. And then it was me, creature A, or whatever, creature B, and then me, and then A, and then B, and then me, trading these whistles. And pretty soon, I noticed they were triangulating on me and getting closer. Pretty soon, I have one behind a cabin and one behind a bus bar, and I'm like, there's something out there. And it's not a bird, because the birds didn't follow me in, right? And so the campfire broke up. I grabbed my kid, and I'm a little freaked out, and I go home and I start Googling. And I started Googling what whistles at night. And I started getting a whole bunch of hits on the female Bigfoot that whistles to lure children into the woods. Now, mind you, my kid's at summer camp. Like, do not go out in the woods with anything whistling at you, right? So the next couple nights I had to pick him up at dinner. And the last night of camp, I'm like, all right, kid, you are staying till the bitter end because I want another shot at this. And so I pulled up again, 10 o'clock or so at night, opened my door, and immediately something started whistling. And this time there was only one. So he whistled back and forth. And from my little bit of research, I had figured out that they also knock. So I knocked twice, it knocked twice. I knocked 3 times, it knocked 3 times. And, mind blown, totally freaked out. There is something out there. And I've told this story so much, and I've thought about it so much that I don't have things in order anymore of which of the 2 nights. But one night I got zapped. I think it was the second night. And people talk about being zapped, and this is the only experience I've ever had of this, and I had no idea what was going on. But all of a sudden, I was absolutely terrified. I slammed the door of my minivan, and I literally cried on the floor of my minivan, just absolutely scared out of my mind. It snapped off instantly. I opened the door, picked up my coffee, and carried on. It was so weird. And one of those times also, there was a small tree pushed over. And all of these things now I realize are very typical Bigfoot behavior. But back then my mind was just blown at the whole concept. And I couldn't wait to find out more. It was like intro to Bigfooting 101, I mean, there was a little bit of everything in there. And I was intrigued and scared and very curious. So I called the BFRO. I think that's when like finding Bigfoot was real big and stuff. And so I called the BFRO or contacted them, email, whatever. And they sent a guy out and we went like trespassing behind the camp. It was on a river. And so, well, I wanted to know what was behind there, Right. So we went, don't tell anyone. So we went behind this camp and we went down the river and, we didn't find Bigfoot, but we didn't also find homeless people. We didn't find growers, which at that time was illegal. We didn't find, evidence of people living back there or camping back there. We did find tons of deer poop. We did find all sorts of berry bushes and fruit trees. And we did find trails going through there with no cobwebs on them. And if you've ever been out in the woods in Oregon, there's cobwebs everywhere, which means something was using those trails. So it was a very interesting beginning to the whole experience. And then a friend and we went out a couple more times along the river and had some more things happening, huffing and tree breaks and things of that sort. And then I got plantar fasciitis so bad, I literally could almost not walk for 5 years. And that was the end of that. So that was my first year of Bigfooting, I guess, in 2012.
That is absolutely incredible. I have so many questions just based off of that. My goodness.
Shoot.
So, and are you able to, I am really curious to hear, I don't know if you're able to try to do the whistle that you had heard that night.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, it's in my brain. It was like.
Oh, man. Okay. Yeah.
Just exactly like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Not something that a bird would do necessarily. It had two tones to it.
Yeah.
And it was repeated by both of them.
Oh, my goodness. This is nuts. Okay. Is it Eastern Lane County?
Is what?
Was it in Eastern Lane County?
Oh, no. This was in August.
Oh, sorry. Like the location of the camp, was it in the
Eastern?
Yeah,
on the east side.
Yeah.
Oh no. This was actually in Lane County, outside of Eugene. It is not far out in the woods, but what it is a natural crossing point to the river. And I do think they travel up and down the river because almost all of the property along the river is privately owned, except for landings. So if you wanted to cruise down the river at night, no one would see you. And I think they use that as a natural way to cross the Willamette Valley.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So what you did is very reminiscent of what we encountered out in the woods around Oakridge.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, and how
it's very common Bigfoot behavior,
It's crazy, yeah.
I know that now.
Yeah.
I didn't know it then.
Oh my goodness. So when you say, because people describe being zapped sometimes a few different ways, from what I got from you there, and feel free to definitely put more info if needed, but it sounds like you were really just like taken over with a certain emotion and then it left quickly.
Absolutely. It hit me out of the blue and it left like turning off pushing a button and turning it off. It was absolute fluttering panic, absolute terror. I mean, I have been camping my whole life. I've been out in the woods. I've done all sorts of stupid things. And I've never been afraid like this. It was just out of the blue. I was literally lying on the floor crying. And that's just not something that I typically do. And it was weird. And then it just shut off instantly. And I sat up like nothing had happened and opened the door back up and continued trading knocks with whatever was out in the woods. It was very bizarre. It's never happened again. And I've been in a lot of sketchy situations since then, which I'll tell you some of them.
Nice.
But that was the weirdest thing.
Okay, so that is so interesting. I mean, some people, they'll say like, oh yeah, they start having migraines and, bloody noses and just really, really, crazy things. That is different parts of the country as well, which could be an interesting twist to it. So then after that, I mean, is this the thing that I feel when I talk to people that are really into this, that there's a certain experience that really like pushes them over the edge? Is this the one where just like it pushed you way, way over, like up to 110%? Yes, Bigfoot is a real thing. And I'll be doing this forever. No, this wasn't it. Okay.
No, actually.
Okay.
What it did was get me very interested in the subject. But like I said, I had plantar fasciitis for almost 6 years. I could barely walk. Wow. So eventually, it's always been in the back of my mind since then. What the heck happened out there? What impact is this going to have on my life? But I'm a single mom to a child with multiple special needs. And at that point, he was like 9 years old. I did not have time, energy, or anything else to be really pursuing this as any sort of firm interest. I mean, it was until he was 18 that I was actually able to get out in the woods by myself every weekend and have time to myself. So it in no way was a part of my life besides fooling around online and looking at things and doing my own research, maybe some reading. But what really got me back into it is I got a dog. I inherited my neighbor's dog when she died, and I wanted to be outside a little more. Again, time to myself. It's 2018 now. So it's 6 years later, my kid's like 16, 17, and I finally get to have some time to myself. So I'm walking my dog, and he's this old man, and we're up at, I'll tell you, we're at Cottage Grove Lake.
Yep.
And I had gone to, I forgot even the name of the Axe and Fiddle maybe in Cottage Grove. And then I discovered that Tobe, whose name I had learned, was doing a Bigfoot meeting there. So my friend and I went for one time, and we had beers and listened to them, and that was kind of fun. And I was walking my dog like the next weekend, and I found barefoot prints along Cottage Grove Lake, and it was the middle of winter, like November. And I'm like, what the heck? And I found them over and over and over. And so I called up the bar and I said, or the tavern, and I'm like, hey, I really need to get a hold of Tobe and tell him about these prints, and what do I do with this? This is exciting. Woo! And so they got in touch, and they sent out one of Tobe's friends. I don't know if I should say his name or not. He usually doesn't go by it. He goes by a nickname. Anyway, so he came out, and we looked at these footprints for like 3 hours. And then I was really kind of intrigued again. I'm like, I can do this. I can walk around, and if it's going to be as easy as this, finding prints and stuff, I'm going to keep doing it. And so eventually I found out that the guy who had come out to my summer camp experience in 2012 was Tobe. And I was telling him this story, and he's like, hey, wait a minute, that was me. So it all kind of circled back around there. He's like, that really sounds familiar. Hey, wait a minute. So we reconnected. So he and his friend took me to the friend's house, which was the original Owl Moon Lab. And I got to see some of his stuff out there. And he gave me some pointers. And then I was kind of back in the game. And then what really got me into it, though, was I was walking my dog on the other side of the reservoir, and it was it was winter, it was maybe like 3 or 4, maybe 3 months later, cold, miserable, rainy Oregon day. but I had to get out of the house. So we're walking, and there's some guys from the Army Corps of Engineers, and they're like fixing some pathways by the bathroom. And there was no one on that side of the lake except for the people who live up, in houses in the hills. And so I'm like, okay, well, I feel safe walking my dog out here because there's a couple of guys right over there. And so I'm walking in, and we walk around the point, and my dog, who is this apartment dog who sits on the couch and watches TV all day long, starts growling. And I've never heard him growl before in my entire life. And I'm like, what the heck? So I snapped a picture of him, and then I snapped a picture down the next bay that we had walked into. And he flat out refused to walk any further, growling. The hackles on his neck were up. And I'm like, there's a bear or something down there. It's the middle of the day. What the heck? Because usually they only come out on the, the mud flats at night. We have some beautiful prints that we've cast and stuff. So I drag him, and I take a couple steps, and something yelled at me. It yelled, "Pip!" I was like, oh, geez, that's not what I said. All right, we're turning around immediately. So that's either a weird coyote or a human, or, I keep finding barefoot prints. Could be a Bigfoot. So we book it back to the car and all the way around. And I look at my pictures afterwards, and sure enough, there's a face in the blackberries. So what I think happened was a juvenile Bigfoot came down the gully to watch the guys hammer and drill and stuff, fixing the paths in the bathroom or whatever the heck they were doing. And we caught him out. We caught him off guard. And then years later, I was listening to Nathan Rio on one of his videos of his hilltop one that he's since pulled down. And he had like 8 or 10 Bigfoot on top of this mountain with him, and one of them yelled the exact same thing in almost the exact same tone.
Oh, man.
I'm like, that means something. It's like, and that's what got me back into it. But I heard that video, and I heard it yell the exact same thing that I heard, and just chills went up and down my spine. So that's what got me back into it. And that was probably the beginning of 2019, January, February 2019. Something like that.
Okay. Well, so that's the situation where it pushes you way over into the 110%.
No, I was still at about 95%.
You're still at 95%. Okay. Even though you had the picture of the 95%. Face okay.
Yeah. I still had questions. I'm like, this cannot possibly be. I mean, really great big, monsters roaming around the woods. Wouldn't someone have seen them? I've camped my whole life. I've, fished. I've, driven country roads. I've slept all over country roads, camping, and really wouldn't someone have seen them? I had no idea of any research or anything historical that had happened at that point. I completely had no clue of that reality.
Okay.
So I was still at 95%.
Oh, man. So there must have been something really wild that pushed you over to pass 100%.
Yeah, but the next thing that also got me interested was in the exact same place.
Okay.
I'm going to send you a picture of it because it's spectacular. We call it the statue structure. And I found that with I'm a preschool teacher, and I used to be a preschool director or assistant director. And one of my teachers and I, her name is also Carrie. Carrie and Carrie were out in the woods, and she saw this thing on the mud flats. And it is the most beautiful, interesting build. I've never seen anyone else have anything like it. And call it the statue structure. Excuse me. And that was in the exact same area. And that was another little thing ticking over. So I went on to the bigfootforums.com, the BFF, to find out more information about this because I was starting to get really interested in. And that's actually where I met Mark from, who was my Bigfooting partner for 5 years. And so I met Mark, and then things really took off at that point because, I'm no longer this 5'2" little woman out in the woods all by herself. I've got this 6'2", dude out with me. So we can do all sorts of stupid things in the woods that neither of us would probably do by ourselves. So we started heading out almost every weekend, and One of the more interesting things, which still didn't put me over the top, was we found in one of our photos I know you're wondering, why doesn't she believe? But we found I think it's a juvenile Bigfoot in a tree. We call it the girl in the tree. She has long hair. She's greenish. She's perfectly blended in with the tree. And I'll send you that photo also. And the worst thing is we had ran around in the woods all day long, and we were sitting there looking at our guns and comparing our guns. All the things to be doing with a Bigfoot watching you. That's probably not one of the best things. But then we kept finding track lines, and we started getting out into the woods almost every other weekend. And now I'm going to start referring to my notes, because 2020 was a good year. We found different track lines, the reservoirs. We started making a circuit out of all the lakes and reservoirs and rivers in the area. And our first sighting was about a year and a half after I started doing this, was July 5th of 2020. That got me to 100%.
All right.
So Mark and I, we were out, and I'm going to say, when I say like Cottage Grove or Dorina or Blue River or Ofterhide or Hills Creek or whatever, that means adjacent in the general area. Sure. I'm not always specifically referring to that specific location, but like adjacent, 20 miles in this direction, 20 miles that way, et cetera, et cetera. Because a lot of these things are along rivers. Is something we have found that they like waterways. And I have a map of Lane County where we have logged out all of the historical things in Lane County. And then we put our things on there too. And there's a definite correlation between bodies of water and Bigfoot activity. So a lot of our things happen in that way. So we were out, and this wasn't by water, but it was Cottage Grove adjacent. So about 20, 25 miles south of Cottage Grove, in an area that Tobe had once upon a time let drop that was a good area for Bigfoot. So we headed out there. It was one of the things on our rounds, and it's like 10 o'clock at night, and nothing was happening. We'd sat up there. Mark had a FLIR thermal camera, and we found a mouse that kept trying to get in the car engine because it was warm. That was the only thing happening. We sat up there for like 3 hours. It was boring beyond belief. And so we're like, oh, that's it. Let's call it. We're going in. So we went down the mountain, and there's a place called the intersection that we call it because there's two roads that come together, obviously an intersection, and the trees were all small enough that you could see in any direction. So we knew if we stopped there, nothing was going to be sneaking up on us. And so we stopped there, and I think Mark's out on one side of the truck, and I'm looking around with the FLIR on the other side of the truck, and I get a hit. And it's big, and it's bright white. And I'm like, oh, I said many things. Hey, Mark, how do you turn on the record button? Because it was brand new. We just got it. And so he runs around the car, and we start recording, and I saw it lean out. First it leaned out, and I saw shoulders, head, and shoulders. And I'm like, that is not a bear. Bears are very triangular if they're standing on their hind legs. But I definitely saw beefy shoulders, head, and shoulders, and it leaned out from the tree, just like they say they do. I'm like, oh my God. So Mark starts recording. We ended up getting 2.5 minutes of a recording, and you can see the second one walk up behind the first one, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, which is really cool. And the thing was we had one FLIR between the two of us. So we're sharing it, passing it back and forth. And when you don't have the FLIR, it is like pitch black. And you can hear something really big crunching out in the salal as it's stepping around. And it was really cool. I wasn't ever scared, which is weird to say. I mean, it was probably, 200-300 feet away from us, maybe 200 feet away from us. It was not far. And there's two of them out there, and they're crunching around, and they're looking at us. And then Mark pointed at them on the camera, and I think they figured out that we could see them all of a sudden. So after like another 20 seconds, they both ducked down into the salal and disappeared. And then we're like, now what do we do? Because we can't see these things. And I know there's rumors of them, army crawling through the forest. And I do not want them sneaking up on us somewhere else. So we were excited and high as a kite, without being high, but we were so excited. And then we zoomed down the mountain. It's like, yep, it's time to go. So that's what put us over 100%. And it was so exciting. And we're just like, they're absolutely real. And I can't believe we just saw something that looks like a NFL linebacker out in the Cottage Grove woods. It's like, this is amazing. This is so cool. And so the next day we came back after work to do our due diligence as researchers, parked ourselves in the exact same spot and did comparison photos and comparison videos. And because we were so familiar with that spot, we knew exactly what the tree looked like that they were standing next to, because it had this little, branch that hung out. And so Mark went out in the woods and, we took pictures, comparison pictures, and Mark doesn't even come close to where these things were. Mark is 6'1", 250 pounds, and he didn't even come close to what these things looked like. But we did our due diligence and we did our comparisons. And we figured that they were standing in this little depression, actually, and they were probably 8 and 9 feet tall. And they were just enormous and amazing. And because it was on the FLIR, they looked like blobs. Mark has a pulsar now, which is a $4,000 piece of equipment. And if we had had that, we would have had footage that would rival the, what's the name of the guy in Florida who got the...
Stacy Brown Jr. and his dad.
Stacy Brown, yeah. I love that footage. It's amazing. We would have had that quality of footage, if not better, if we'd had the pulsar instead of the FLIR. But
wow,
yeah. So that was our first sighting.
That's awesome. Is that then the video on your channel where it's 7/5/20 our FLIR sighting? That one.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
July 5th, 2020. And 2020, it was a hard year. It was a hard year for me personally because 2 weeks after that, I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh, dear.
And in mid-July. And I had a double mastectomy on August 28th. And I was back in the woods the next weekend, which was really stupid. But I needed to get out. So our second sighting was October 17th. So we're talking, I've been out of, I'm in recovery 6 weeks after surgery. And I am in bandages and I still have drainage tubes and all sorts of crap. And I'm like, let's go out in the woods. And so we're rolling around the hills outside of Oakridge at one of the reservoirs. It wasn't Hills Creek. It's the one next to Dexter. Is that Hills Creek? Yeah, it might be. I always get that one mixed up, and I don't know why. It wasn't Fall Creek, so it was the lower one.
There's a Lookout Point Lake, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. You would think I would remember this. But Fall Creek is where I fell and broke my wrist a year later. Wow. But so we're rolling around the dirt side of the reservoir, and we look across, and there's a culvert. And there's someone standing in it. And it's like, oh, well, that's kind of weird. And it's a long ways away. And I'm like, hey, Mark, look at this dude standing in the culvert staring at us. And so he looks over and he's like, yeah, that's really weird. And I didn't think to grab my camera because it wasn't that weird. But he was all dressed in brown, one color. And then instead of turning around and going back into the culvert or stepping out, he literally stepped backwards into the shadows. And it's like, what the heck was that? That's kind of weird. Let's go check it out. So we had to go an hour. It took us an hour to get down the dirt road, find a bridge, and go back up the highway. And then we had to climb down, and it's those big boulders that hold up the dirt. And here I am, I'm, bandaged up still. So we have very carefully to crawl down these boulders. And then we realize it's just a rock field. So we're walking through this rock field, and then we realize it's a creek. So we have to step across the creek, and then we realize the creek is coming from inside the culvert. So we get up to the culvert, and there's 4 inches of water coming out of it. There's a stream in the culvert. So who the heck is standing in a culvert in 4 inches of water staring at people across the river? It's like, okay, this is just getting more and more weird. So Mark's like, let's go see what's on the other side. So being an idiot, of course I did. So we go under this 100-foot culvert that's slimy with mud very, very carefully so I don't fall and break anything. Get to the other side, and it is literally just a creek a very steep creek going up into the hills. There's no hiking paths. There's no reason for that person to be in the culvert. And we tried getting up to the truck from that side, and we couldn't do it. It was so steep. We had to go back through the culvert, climb back up the rocks, and cross the road and get back in the Jeep. And it's like, you know what? I think we might have just had a daylight sighting, because that's really weird behavior for a person. And there's no reason for someone to be standing in 4 inches of water with no trails, paths, or anything else. And where the heck did he go? So we think that was our second sighting, and that would be October 17th.
Wow.
And that was really, really cool also. But we questioned it, and just like, yes, no. And then just the weirdness of it pushed us to yes.
That's like, awesome.
Now we call that our second sighting. Okay. So it's just like, that's cool. But it was so weird, just odd.
Was the area you were on the north side, which is the dirt side, was it close to Ivan Oaks campground at all?
I have no idea.
Okay. And I just interviewed someone who had like a year's worth of experiences at Ivan Oaks. It'll be out in like 2 days from this actual day, but she had some crazy stuff.
I have no idea what campgrounds are around there.
Okay.
I no idea.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't know. Every time we go to Oakridge, we drive right past it. And so we look down the little creek, and there's nothing ever there, but that's just what we do on our way to Oakridge. It's like, yeah, we saw a Bigfoot here.
Absolutely. Cool. Yeah, I would go there. I would always be thinking that when I drove by. Also, congratulations on beating cancer as well. That is a huge,
thank you.
Deal. Yeah.
Actually, my doctor is so certain they got it all that you have to take medication for 10 years, some chemotherapy, estrogen blocking medication for 10 years, and it'll be 5 years in October. And I think she's going to let me come off of it at 5 years instead of 10. So
that's awesome.
So that's awesome.
I don't talk about this ever, but I am also a survivor, but pediatric.
Yay.
Non-Hodgkin's. Yeah. I was one of the first kids in the 80s to survive. They had no idea what they were doing. It was just like throwing darts at a wall pretty much. But yeah, they figured it out. So that was pretty cool.
Wow.
Right?
That's cool. I'm glad for you. Yay. So for a very long time, Mark and I were very successful. We would go out and like one weekend out of the month, out of 4 weekends, we would find things. We got really good at being able to identify when I go out in the woods, what I'm looking for, and I'm, driving through the hills and doing things, is I am looking for patterns. And it's a lot of pattern recognition things, which non-neurotypical people sometimes can be better at, because you're not looking for what you expect to find. So what I look for in the woods is like parallel things that are too neat and tidy. And that's how we find structures. That's how we find teepees. That's how we find lean-tos. That's how we have found all sorts of things. But we're also finding prints all over Lane County. I am obsessed with finding and hoping to find juvenile prints because I'm a preschool teacher. I am curious as to what their children look like. What do they do? How do they live? How do they raise them? How do they teach them? I am fascinated by those questions. And what we have discovered is that we have found the same prints up at Blue River adjacent areas 7 times over the last 5 years. And the prints are gradually getting bigger. They're 6 inches. They were 6 inches, 9 inches, and 12 inches. And now they're like an inch bigger. But after the fires 2 years ago, they disappeared. And I don't know where they went or what happened to them. But that's an exciting thing. So we find prints, and we found them at all sorts of places. The other thing we find is wood knocks. I actually have 2 wood knocks captured on video. I've probably heard 50 wood knocks over these years. We have one lake that I won't tell you the name of, up in the high Cascades. I call it Windy Lake because the wind only blows from one direction, and when I'm fly fishing, it's invariably making my flies fly back to me, and I lose all my flies in the lake, and it makes me angry. But every time we go there, we've gotten knocks, and we've been there 4 times. And another place that we went that it was affected by fires, it's a mile walk in, and we walk in, and we had a huge knock. I mean, probably 300 feet away up the mountain, just huge. And then nothing. And there's one campsite at this lake in the middle of nowhere. And so we went fishing, and Mark was doing audio, and it must have gotten disgusted with us or something because it pushed over a tree on the way out, and Mark caught it on audio. And it's off in the distance. So that's the second time that happened, because it happened at the camp, and then it happened at that little lake. So we get wood knocks, we get structures, we get prints. We've gotten samurai chatter actually once.
Oh, wow.
You know what samurai chatter is,
yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we were out at a place probably 30 miles south of Cottage Grove. We call it Mushroom Mountain. A friend of mine turned us onto it because it is a chanterelle haven. And Mark and I are also mushroom hunters. So we were out. They showed us where it was one time, and then we came back on our own. And we've been back there probably 6 or 7 times. It's one of the things that's was on our regular route. And so we were out there, and we're up on this mountain, and it is like dead. It is a weird mountain. There's nothing growing on it except trees and chanterelles. There's hardly any undergrowth. It feels very dead. Everything is just rotting. It's mushrooms. And we're up there, and we're doing our thing, filling our baskets and whatnot. And we start hearing what sounded like 3 Chinese girls just chattering away. Blah, 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 blah. And I look at Mark, and I'm like, did you hear any cars come up the road? Because it's on a clear cut, and you can hear cars come up. And we were probably, I don't know, not that far from the road where we were particularly. And I'm like, I didn't hear any cars. And he's like, I didn't hear any cars. And so they continued just to chatter. And then a raven flew over, squawked really loudly, and the voices turned off. I'm like, let's go back to the car and see if the audio that we stuck on the tire got it. And it didn't, which was super disappointing. But there were no other cars in the little pull-out thing for Mushroom Mountain. There's no other cars. There's not another soul there. And it's like, we just heard samurai chatter, and it was 3 teenage girls. It was a couple girls just talking away. It's like, that was really cool. But it was also a little creepy because he thought it was from one direction, and I thought it was from the opposite direction. So I don't know how that works. But that was something that happened up there.
That is awesome. For people that don't know what that is, you can listen to the Sierra Sounds from Ron Moorhead, and that's what we're referring to. Is that a thing that is reported a lot in that county? Have other people reported hearing things similar to that?
The only person that I've ever heard talk about vocals in Lane County was Tobe and his friend. His friend went out in the hills near probably a mile from where we had from what I understand, from where we had our sighting. And we've had other things happen up there too. Like I'll send you a picture of the Creekside art it was these series of sticks put over a very deep creek, and there's a tree wrap of these branches that are wrapped around a tree, and we've had a structure there and all sorts of things. But he was further down the road, and he has a story of the old man, and the old man has a super deep voice. And the old man yelled at him when he was sitting in his truck, and the old man yelled at him. And that's the only other person that I've heard really speak about vocals in Lane County that I know of. We have only heard one whoop, and it was on a reservoir, and it could have been people. I'm not sure, so we don't count that one.
Have you ever experienced anything weird around Hills Creek?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
We have.
Yeah.
We have a beautiful wet footprint on a rock right next to the river, and we got out, and it's a beautiful little spot. It's a dispersed camping spot. We got out, and it's just beautiful. The water is such an amazing color. So it's one of our little stops. It's like, hey, should we stop and eat lunch? And there is this huge footprint on a rock right coming out of the river, and it's wet, and you can see like 5 toes on it. And I'll send you that picture too, because it's really cool. But there was only one of them. Nothing else was wet. We did find like little tiny snails and things that had been eaten, or in the little guts were smeared on a rock. But yeah, and then the meadow where we found the girl was above that. The girl in the tree. That was above Hills Creek up in the mountains.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And we also have had other things happen in that same spot at the meadows. We've had rocks thrown at us, little tiny pebbles. And it's like, was that a bug or a pebble? It's like, maybe we should not find out. I don't know. So we've had other things happen there too.
The south of 58 though, right?
I got to look at a map in my head.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
I'm not sure. Honest to God, I sat down one day and I wrote out, and we have like 83 things that have happened. Prints, chatter, single prints, finger smears. We have a place that we call Harry Creek, which is off one of the reservoirs. It goes a big river that goes up into the hills, and we were fooling around there one day, and there was berries on a rock in the middle of the creek, and there was very dirty fingerprints smeared all over the rocks. And then we found a hair up higher, a little kinky curly hair. Could be human. We don't know. We never did anything with it. Mark's probably still has it. So we call that Harry Creek, but we've, had other things happen up that way too. Honestly, every reservoir, every lake, we go up by Waldo, way up on top of the Cascades, and there's hundreds of little tiny lakes up there. And we have found, some weird things happening up at there. One of our biggest nights of Bigfooting, we didn't see anything, which is really frustrating because they didn't ever make themselves known. But we were up there, and we're up at this lake, and we're just checking it out. We're scouting things. We go out, and we used to go out, and we would scout things and go to lakes and just roll around in the woods looking for weird things or places that we've heard about or rumors or stories or whatever. And we go check it out. And so we're up there at this lake, and it has 10 dispersed campsites around it. And these girls come running in from the trail that goes up to some upper lakes. And they look a little panicked, and we're like, hey, what's going on? You guys okay? And they look at each other, and they look at us, and I can just see them thinking, should we tell these people? And so they're like, well, there's rocks above the campsite. There's a whole scree field. And something threw rocks down it all night long and then stomped through our campground and scared the crud out of us. And we're not going up there ever again. So Mark and I look at each other and are like, oh, heck yeah, we're going up there next weekend. So we went up there the next weekend. And we call it Wood Knock Lake. Mark has the video of it on his channel, which is Sasquatch Habitat Investigation Team, SHIT, because he does dad jokes like that.
Yeah.
So we were up there and nothing happened that night. It was a beautiful night. You know, we were a little on edge, but what Mark decided to do was bring a recording of a baby crying. So we were at one point of the lake, and imagine a triangle. So he puts the crying baby audio over by the rock scree, and it goes off 15 minutes every 2 hours. So it went off a couple times in the night. I didn't sleep much, but, you know, I was waiting to see if anything happens. Nothing happened. So we woke up, we're having breakfast, and then something happened. Something was really, really angry on the third point of the triangle. And we got 8 wood knocks. I've got one of them on video. And you can hear it crack, and it go crack, crack, crack around the lake. Whatever was down there was not happy with us. But we could never, the FLIR was not strong enough to you know, pick out that, and it was daylight and things were warm already, so we couldn't see anything down there. But boy, we could sure hear it, and it was not happy with us. So we hightailed it out of there, and it's a good 4-mile hike back to the lower lake. And we were escorted out. There were knocks behind us all the way out, like 2 or 3. Just to let us know, it was about 2/3 of the way that we finally didn't have any more knocks following us. But that was amazing, and we always hoped to go back, and then for one reason or another we couldn't. And then we went last year, was our last camping trip, and we were going to try to get up to the upper lake. It was like June 10th, and we get up there, and there's still snow on the trail. We can't even get up to the upper lake, which was really disappointing. And then we camped that night. It was a beautiful day, and in the middle of the night, a snowstorm blew in in the middle of June. So we had to leave the next day.
Really? A snowstorm in the middle of June?
Yes.
Oh,
and the
goodness.
Other exciting thing on that is that we found a structure behind the campground.
Oh.
I'll send you a picture of that too. And it was like, you know how a tree tips over and then the roots are sticking up? Well, I was looking for firewood because it was cold. I was looking for firewood, and I saw a whole bunch of logs. I'm like, oh, cool. Someone stacked some logs up here. And I went over and looked at it, and it's like, oh, that is not a firewood stack. It was logs that were stacked against the ground and then up against the roots. And over the top of them was big chunks of bark. But I'm like, that doesn't look right. That doesn't look like kids playing, because it's full of mud, first of all, because the snow had been melting and dripping into this hole. And it was just gross in there. So I'm like, that's a possibility. And it was a perfect spot to sit there and stare at the camp. Totally hidden. The only reason I saw it is because I started climbing up the hill looking for firewood. And I saw the parallel lines, which of course stick out to me like a sore thumb in the woods. So that was really cool. And that was the last time I went camping, except for this weekend. So,
that's awesome. That's, you know, you bring up the whole parallel lines and the patterns. That's something that really stuck out to me too in the woods, outside of Oakridge, because it's just so blatantly obvious. Like you've got a tree next to a tree where it's twisted, it's broken 8 to 10 feet up. And then the way that the tree that is, you know, coming down is at an angle, but like just the way it looks like it should be a piece of art. And you're like, this is so ridiculous. Like there's no way this was snow load. It's crazy.
Exactly. We've seen little twists like that also. South of Cottage Grove, there's a trail that we went down, and it was just the ends of the branches. The last 4 inches of the branches of these trees along the trail were twisted backwards. And it wasn't every one. So there's little twists like that. And then we have seen big twists where the whole thing is twisted all the way around. And actually at the camp, at my very first camp in 2012, there was a huge tree twisted. And it, you know, most people would look at that and think, oh, it's flotsam from the river. But this thing was twisted all the way around, and set up like a triangle. And it really caught my eye, because once you see it, you're like, that's not natural. I don't know how that would happen. And that's what I look for in the woods. I don't know how that would happen. I don't know how that would fall like that. I don't know how that would, look the way it does. So those are the things that I look for, and we find more often than not. So,
it's such an interesting area. I've had so many conversations about this area, and
Cottage Grove and Oakridge are famous for a good reason.
No, they are. You already kind of mentioned, like, you're not super into the weird stuff, although you have had, you've seen some orbs at times, but man, I can't think of another area where I have random people email me and be like, it's not just Bigfoot. I saw gnomes. I saw fairies. I saw a dog man. Like, think of anything.
Okay, I have a friend who.
It's like, holy mackerel.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a friend who swears that they saw 2 dogmen up at Silver Falls. And I think in the next couple, 2 or 3 weeks, I'm going to go hiking up at Silver Falls. So I'll let you know if I see anything.
All right.
Our orbs we found that we saw, I actually had my friend Carrie, who found the statue structure with me years ago, with us that time. And she saw them too. And I'm super glad we had a third person there to verify. But these orbs were very odd. They looked from basketball size to hula hoop size, and they were pale yellow and pink and blue and white. And they moved in different directions. They didn't flow all in one direction like they were following a breeze or anything like that. They would go opposite directions and up and down and in and out of the trees. And eventually Carrie was so creeped out, she ran back to the truck. And then I was desperately trying to get pictures of anything, and it wouldn't show up on the FLIR. It wouldn't show up on Mark's Pulsar. It wouldn't show up on my phone. I could not get a picture of these darn things. I finally found one in one of my photos, and it looks like a smoke ring. But we saw these orbs, and then at Blue River is where we find all sorts of weird stuff. So you go way out, and there's a place called Wolf Rock. So there's some weird stuff that happens around there. It's the largest monolith in the state of Oregon. But on the way there, there's another place where we saw lights in the woods, and there's no houses out there. There is nothing behind there that would have justified this light that we found. And we kept looking at it, and we took pictures of it. We did get pictures of that. And then on the lake bed, this was probably in 2018 or 19 when we were first finding the track lines. We found the track line, and the next day I went out to cast the prints by myself. And they were across from the path down to it, and they were all the way across the mud flat. So I had to walk out on this, and I'm carrying just a ton of stuff. I'm carrying a bucket. I'm carrying water. I'm carrying plaster and a chair and, a snack and lunch and whatever, because I have to sit out there until they dry. So I cast the things, and I was super creeped out walking down this path, down this little road to the water. And I'm like, I don't know why I'm so creeped out. There's nothing here. And so I go out, I'm all by myself, I'm casting potential Bigfoot prints, and I'm perfectly fine. Over on the far side by the forest, I'm perfectly fine. Finally, I decide I'm going to take some of my stuff back to the car. So an hour later, I take some of my stuff back to the car, because plaster is really heavy once you get it all, and I didn't want to crowd them and squish them at all, or, muss up my brand new prints, my casts. So I take some of my stuff back, and I am creeped out again. I have my hand on my weapon. That's how creeped out I was. I'm not stupid. When I go out by myself in the woods, I'm not usually armed. Okay. So I had my hand on my weapon, and there was nothing there. So I come back from the car again, super creeped out. The hair on my arm is standing on end. I walk out, I pick up my prints, and I hurry back to the truck. And again, for the 4th time, I'm totally creeped out at the same spot. So while I was out there picking up the prints, I took a picture of the mountain. And it is absolutely not something I saw, but there is something blue and yellow and white in the trees at the base of the mountain. And when I was showing, it's a pretty picture because the mountain, the sun is like, setting, and it's really pretty, and it's a really pretty picture. And then my friend's like, what is that shiny thing there? And I'm like, what shiny thing? And then we zoomed in on it. It's like, what the heck? That's right where I felt creeped out. There is something in there that was making me feel creeped out that I could not see. So I went back another weekend, same time, same day, or not same day, same time, same place, and took pictures of vehicles driving past, and it was bigger than a pickup with its lights on. And it was not near the road. It was below the road. So I know exactly where it was. So I think that was it's not a UFO because it wasn't flying, but there's weird stuff that happens out there. Orbs and lights and this potential UFO thing and Bigfoot. And it's just a creepy, creepy area. And that's where we have found the same prints 7 times. All sorts of stuff happens out that direction.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh my goodness.
So while I don't believe in woo necessarily, I do believe there's things out there that we do not understand.
Absolutely. That
we don't have a good explanation for. Everything I have seen of Sasquatch has been, physical things, footprints, things that they have made, things that they potentially have eaten, nothing, voices, nothing that would lead me to think of anything supernatural. But on the other hand, I've now seen orbs and UFOs. So
right. Yeah.
I don't know what to think about that anymore. My mind is open to it, but that has not been my experience with Sasquatch at this point.
Yeah,
I'm good with that.
It's one of those things where, that area, like if you go out there and like you're just like have an open, I don't know, I experienced some weird stuff. Like, I don't know if you've heard the story of what happened by Hills Creek Reservoir on my last day out there. I've told this a few times, but
I don't know. Please
okay.
tell.
Yeah. So, listeners, you're going to have to hear it again. So, so I got like this weird, I got these insect bites, I think, that like got really bad. And so I had to go into, where was it? It was like just outside of Eugene on my last day to get antibiotics and stuff. And then I was all like, oh man, I had to cancel interviews, blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, whatever, I'm going to get a burger and just drive around Hills Creek, and just kind of whatever. And then, so this is weird. So I'm just driving along and I've been like, you know what? If you want to see him, just say I'm ready to see you. Like that's what someone told.
I've heard your story. Keep going though.
Yeah, and I drove by a tree and like there was the outline of a silhouette of a Bigfoot that was like 7 to 8 feet tall in the vine covering a pine tree, and it disappeared. And I was like, oh my goodness, what in the world?
Oh wow!
It was absolutely bonkers, and I have no idea what to think about it. I don't know if it was the fever or what, or maybe it really happened. But I do have an open mind. So
things happen, and some things I just don't have an explanation for.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know, but I'm open to it. But so far, I haven't seen anything that would lead me to justify saying I believe in woo. So, but who knows?
Who knows? Who knows?
Who knows?
You had said Silver Falls. Is that the state park you were referring to?
Yes.
Okay, cool. That's what I thought, because I've gotten like 2 different Bigfoot reports from that park over the last year as well, which is not surprising. And also,
no, it's all wilderness.
Yeah, it really is. It was almost a national park, beautiful. I think, too. They tried to
beautiful.
Turn it into a national park. This is like 100 years ago or something, but also
I don't doubt it.
I talked to a guy. He was telling me that there's been a lot of people in Detroit, the town of Detroit, that have actually not just had Bigfoot sightings, but they've also had Dogman sightings too. So that's kind of interesting, since that's on 22, and then you have to. That's kind of, it's more west, but Silver Falls is.
Okay, so what I did this last weekend is I have always wanted to see Cliff Brackman's Bigfoot Museum.
Oh, sure.
So I planned it, so I did not have work on Friday, so I did all my stuff on Friday. Saturday, I drove up to Boring, Oregon. I drove to Tualatin and then across to Boring, went to the museum, and then I went to Estacada, and I camped on a road called Indian Henry Road, which is supposedly one of is one of the roads in the Bigfoot Highway by Joe Bielert and I forgot the other guy's name.
Cliff Olson.
Absolutely nothing. Cliff Olson, thank you. Absolutely nothing happened, but it was my first solo camping adventure in the middle of nowhere on a known Bigfoot area. Scared the daylights out of me. I'm like, if I can do this, I can do anything. Absolutely nothing happened. I slept like 3 hours, and then I drove the rest of the Bigfoot Highway into Detroit.
Wow.
And then I realized I really should probably get home and stop taking. I would take side roads and I'd go up 5 miles on the dirt roads and then come back just looking for stuff, Did not find anything. I was so disappointed. The whole thing. Found absolutely nothing on any side road, anything. It was a total bust, but it was so much fun. But yeah, I ended up in Detroit, and that whole corridor along the Clackamas is just squatchy as all get out. I hate that term, but that just describes it. Everything around there. And then even, I took the shorter way into Sweet Home. And all of that is just prime territory also. And then I, hit the freeway and came back to Eugene because my kid was calling me at that point going, when are you coming home?
Yeah.
I'm hungry.
Right. Exactly.
Like, starve all weekend. But yeah, so I just drove there, and that's a little long for me to go Bigfooting, but to make a weekend of it, it was doable. But that's like 3 or 4 hours for me once you get up there. No, more like 3. But it's a ways. But yeah, lots of reports up there. Everywhere. I bought that book, and I also bought this little map at the museum. By the way, if you have not been to Cliff's Museum up in Boring and you're ever in the Portland area, that is absolutely worth going to. It's an amazing experience. It vastly exceeded my expectations. It was really cool, and I wish I'd taken more pictures of things. And a couple of the things I knew about, like I knew about, there's like some prints that that I was familiar with, and it was really cool. And then I asked the receptionist, not the receptionist, the cashier. I'm like, all right, where should I camp tonight? So she's like, okay, and she told me where to go. So
that's awesome.
That was kind of fun.
That
was kind of fun. But if you have an opportunity to go to it, you should go to it. It is so worth it. He did a great job. Him and Melissa did a fabulous job. But we have to say, one time he told me a track line that had a 72-inch heel-to-heel track line was not Bigfoot. And I'm like, dude, you're wrong. I'm sorry, you're just wrong. 72 inches, unless you're an Olympic sprinter. And this thing was not sprinting, it was walking. There was no dirt flown about, whatever.
Right.
That would indicate running. I'm like, dude, you're just wrong. Even Cliff is not infallible.
Right. Cliff he's a fun guy to talk to. I've had we got to hang out. To him several times. We got to hang out during the festival, and we went out, and the group of us went out in the woods.
He's super knowledgeable.
Oh yeah, he's smart, nice. But
so what I have coming up in the next couple months, I'm going to go to the Bigfoot Festival up in, I don't know how to pronounce it, Melitine Falls in Washington.
Yep. I'm
going to go up to that one. I'll probably get to Oakridge, but I think it's Friday, Saturday or something.
Yes.
I don't know. I might go to the Oakridge one. I got to work on Friday, so that's not going to work. But I might go on Saturday. I'm going to try to get to the Olympic Peninsula. Excuse me. Just looking at that display of the nest that they have. I don't know if it's a recreation or if they pulled it out of the woods or what, but they have a nest from the Olympic Peninsula sites. I forgot which group is doing the research up in Olympic Peninsula.
The Olympic Project, Yep.
Well, that makes sense.
Yep.
I mean, they're pretty close mouthed about what they're doing and finding and such. But I'd like to go poke around up there. So I'd like to do that. I want to get up to the Tillamook area and nose around because I've heard of some things up there. I want to go to the redwoods. I don't know. There's so many things I want to do, but I'll have to see how gas prices are.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, and yeah, if I lived out there, I wouldn't have enough time probably in 20 years to go everywhere. I mean, there's so many people, there's so many places to go to in the PNW related to Bigfoot. I mean, and
oh yeah. I mean, I want to do the pilgrimage to the Patterson-Gimlin site someday,
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to do that. We tried doing that once. We tried going to the museum in Willits or wherever it's called. And they were closed the one day we were driving. My family all lives in Reno. So I'm like, all right, kid, we're driving down and we're going to cut across here. It was like 108 degrees. The museum was closed and there was construction on the highway. So it just didn't happen. It took us like hours and hours to get to 12 hours to do an 8-hour drive. And we didn't get to see what we wanted. So there was no just, let's go to the Patterson-Gimlin site. It's like, that's not going to work. So that's on the bucket list someday.
Oh, in our last few minutes, have you ever heard anything? There's an area, it's like Subtle Lake Sisters area. Do you get anything from around there? Or have you checked that area out?
That doesn't sound familiar, but okay. We do get up Mark and I used to get up into the high country. I don't know what I'll do by myself. Now that I'm Bigfooting by myself. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. I mean, I keep looking for people to Bigfoot with, but usually they think you're, a fruitcake. They're like, sure, lady. But around here, people believe, but they don't want anything to do with it. So no, I think about every 10th person will be like, yeah, I believe in Bigfoot, and they're willing to say it, but finding people to actually go out with is much harder.
Gotcha.
Who want to waste their gasoline and their Saturdays every weekend being in the woods looking for Bigfoot, People are like, you're going to get the picture someday and make a whole bunch of money. And I'm like, in the meantime, I've spent thousands of dollars doing this hobby. Thousands. Get out in the woods. I fly fish. I look for mushrooms. Exactly. I, do bushcraft. I, do regular fishing. I do hiking and backpacking and kayaking. I'm going to get a new fishing kayak this summer. And, I want to do some, canoe camping or kayak camping. So I got plans. And there's things to do out there that aren't Bigfooting. And I find that Bigfoot happens when you're doing other things.
Yeah, I would agree fully that the stuff does tend to happen when you're just hanging out and, hanging out.
You hike into a lake, you're going to go fishing, and something, all of a sudden you got a wood knock.
Exactly.
And I swear, I wonder sometimes, people have talked about, and this is kind of woo, that they put some sort of marker on you where they all know that they exist. So when you walk into a lake, they may not knock for everyone, but they're going to knock so that they're there. And that's such a weird thing. Mm-hmm. But that's the only reason I can think of that. I mean, I have lots of friends who hike and backpack, and I'm a co-moderator of a hiking group, for heaven's sakes. I'm really bad at it, but none of these people have ever heard wood knocks or found prints or anything else. It's like, I know you guys are out in the woods. And I bet you when you go out with me, we're going to have wood knocks.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I can't explain that. I don't know why it happens.
Yeah,
But I wonder if there's some sort of marker, put on people who know.
It is really interesting. You start, if you talk to a lot of people that have had experiences, and you do start to notice patterns where the people that if they have an experience out in the woods, sometimes afterwards they will open them. It's almost like they've opened themselves up to other things as well that are now like, oh, hey, this person is in this area, and you better be careful. You may have brought something home. That can happen a lot too, and it's very, very strange. And I don't know if we'll ever really understand everything that's going on there. But that is something that does keep coming up in people's accounts as well. So,
yeah. Well, besides just regular emergency prep and stuff, and having your backpacking stuff that you should have, I also ground myself and do a spell of protection around myself before I go out in the woods, so I don't bring something home accidentally. Especially UFOs and aliens. I want nothing to do with them. Nothing. I don't want to know that. I don't like that picture. I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
Bigfoot, sure. No, UFOs, no.
Absolutely. And, I've talked to 2 different people that have had sightings in the woods down by Cottage Grove, Owl Moon Lab area, where they've seen something that looks like an alien in the woods.
Oh, I've heard that from Tobe too.
Yep.
And I've heard metallic sounds in the woods that sound like doors opening.
Oh, you have?
And yeah, I've heard some weird things out there. And I don't want anything to do with that. No, thank you. I have a friend who was in the military. He used to hunt people and poachers, and now he hunts poachers and whatnot. And he has gone into many, many places in the woods, and he has seen stick Indians, and he's Native American, and he says, don't talk about those things. But he has seen them in that area. And a lot of times he'll tell me, I'll say, hey, is this area okay to go in? And he'll give me warnings, watch out for this, that. Yes, this is safe, whatever. But he has seen stick Indians, little people in that area. And I'm like, no, I don't want anything to do with that either.
Oh, wow. Okay. That is also something I've heard a little bit. Like, yeah, there's little people things going on in that area as well. Man, that's crazy. Do you think there's any reason why all this stuff happens? Well, I guess it's really all over Oregon. I just kind of hyper focus on this one area is what it comes down to. But really all of Oregon has weird stuff like this happening, correct?
I think it's all over.
Yeah, not true.
If you think about the big picture, when Europeans came to this continent, of course, Native Americans were already here, right? Living their lives, doing their things. All of the native tribes have names for Sasquatch, and some of them have names for other creatures also. But I think, we brought our diseases over here and killed off all the Native Americans. And I wonder if it also killed off a lot of the Sasquatch species. And so now they're making a comeback, for many, many hundreds of years, decades, the last decades, and then you start getting stories. But it could also be that we're just pushing into their territory as our cities and towns expand into the wilderness. But yeah, there's a lot of weird things on the West Coast, but there's stories everywhere. Look at Appalachia. I have my friends Joe and Jesse who are Hellbent Hauler. Joe and I are on the Bigfoot forums, which have disappeared. I don't know where they went, but Joe and I have talked for years, and Mark and I, and they have all sorts of weird stuff happen in Appalachia. So it's not only the Pacific Northwest, it's other areas of the country too. But yeah, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Bigfoot is like the gateway drug to all sorts of weird woods.
Yeah, so that's the perfect way to put it, really. It really does open you up, and you have to be aware of who you really are.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's a pretty easy way to put it. Carrie, man, it has been just a really fun conversation with you about Lane County and all the things that you have gotten into over the years, and I'm sure there'll continue to be cool things that happen, but I want to make sure that people are aware of how they can keep up to date with what you're doing, and if is there also a way that they might be able to reach out to you if they need to about things in the area or anything like that?
Oh, sure. I have my YouTube channel, Lane County Bigfooters. And I have to say, I have no idea how to edit. I am the most technology Luddite person you've ever met in your life. what you see is what you get. So eventually I hope to learn how to edit and have an intro and an outro and make it look a lot better. But today is not that day. So you can go to my YouTube channel and see all of this at Lane County Bigfooters. You can email me at lanecountybigfooters@gmail.com. And I'm really super bad about checking my account. Like twice a year. Bad.
That's awesome.
But if you comment on a video I recently made and say, hey, Carrie, go check out your email, then I'll remember to go check my email. And I supposedly have a Facebook page too, but that's even worse. I never update that. So that's pretty much defunct. But you can reach me in those two things.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure that all that is in the show notes, but thank you so much for coming on the show tonight, and best of luck in the future, Carrie.
Thank you so much.
Just wanted to take a minute to say thank you for listening to this episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. Carrie's journey is one of those rare stories that blends personal struggle, raw fear, and relentless curiosity. Whether it was the eerie whistles near that summer camp, the creature behind the culvert, or the two caught on thermal in the Oregon woods, her story sticks with you. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to the channel on YouTube, hit the bell icon so you don't miss any new episodes, and share this one with a friend who's into Bigfoot, Oregon lore, or just a wild mystery in the forest. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure you're following the show, and if you'd be willing to leave a positive review, it helps us reach more curious minds like yours. Now, if you or someone you know has had a Bigfoot encounter, especially around Lane County, Oregon, the Oakridge area, Blue River, or the Cottage Grove area, I would love to hear your story. Please shoot me an email at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. And don't forget, Sasquatch Summerfest is coming up July 11th through 12th at Greenwaters Park in Oakridge, Oregon. Bigfoot Society listeners can grab a 2-day pass for the price of a 1-day admission with code BFS at checkout. Tickets are at www.sasquatchsummerfest.com. Thank you again for being part of the Bigfoot Society. Until next time, keep your eyes open, trust your gut, and never stop asking what else might be out there. And see you in the woods.